All right. Make sure it comes up. Can everybody see this? Okay, great. So today, Sarah and I are just going to be talking about communication supports that are kind of available for individuals who have ALS and things we always have available. I think one of my favorite things that I've learned from John Costello, who is a speech language pathologist in Boston, is that we always just like to talk about a lot of these communication supports like an insurance policy. A lot of things that I'm hoping that people are never going to need, but I want you to know that they're there in case that you do. And so a little bit about Sarah and I. We are both speech language pathologists at the Waisman Center, and we focus on augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. And really what that is just a fancy term for communication tools. We really work to maximize communication however we can, if maybe speech is just not meeting all those needs anymore. We don't have any financial relationships or non-financial relationships to disclose. We always love to throw that in. And so I just want to talk through today really some different communication supports and what's available at kind of different times if you notice changes. And so really how we're going to frame this is by thinking about changes that you might see in your speech with ALS. I think as many of you probably know, there isn't always kind of a one set trajectory for everybody. It's a little bit different. For some people, they don't have any changes in their speech and they're able to really use their speech really well. For others, we see changes in speech first. Maybe it's a little bit harder to get that breath support, to get that vocal, that really loud kind of voice that you have, or maybe it's a little bit difficult to get all those speech sounds together. And so really we're just talking about what kind of communication tools exist at all of these levels, and what insurance policy kind of exists at all these levels as well. And so I just want to start out by talking a little bit about maybe individuals who aren't noticing any changes in their speech. Your speech is still really strong. You feel like you can communicate really well. What kind of things can we consider? And so the really big thing that we love to consider at this stage is kind of these three different buckets called voice, message, and legacy banking. And so they all are fairly similar and can kind of overlap and be intertwined, but they're a little bit different. With voice banking, what you're doing is you're making a recording of kind of a set of maybe some nonsensical sentences. And really the goal is to create kind of a digitized voice that sounds like your voice. And so, for example, when you think of voices like Siri or Alexa, all devices in the future, if you needed a communication device to kind of help with speech at some point, all communication devices have some built-in voices, but a lot of times people don't want a voice that sounds like someone else. They want a voice that sounds like them. And that's what voice banking does, is it kind of allows you to create a voice that's a little bit more like you and sounds a little bit less like Siri or Alexa. And there are a number of different programs that you can use to do this. There's no cost to any of them. And really all that you have to do is record these sentences and then it'll make a voice for you. And if you need it, you can download it later. And if you don't, then it just sits there. But it's just there for you to use if you would want it in the future. And so really those big ones that we see people use are Model Talker, Acapella My Own Voice, and Vocal ID. Both Model Talker and Acapella you can just do with a computer and a microphone at home. It's pretty straightforward. The big difference is in the number of sentences that you record. With Model Talker, it's like 1,600 sentences. It's quite a bit. But with Acapella, you can create a pretty reliable voice with only 350 sentences. And so it's really nice to kind of have that option. Another really cool thing about the Acapella My Own Voice is that you can do something kind of called double dipping, where you're able to use other recordings of your voice to create kind of two voices that you can compare then and choose which one you might want to download if you should need it in the future. And so that's a really cool option too, just because it allows you to have a little bit more flexibility. So the next kind of thing that we like to think about at this step is message banking. And message banking is a little different from voice banking in that with messages, you're actually just creating little digital recordings of you saying little phrases. So whether that's just like requesting help or asking, saying like what your daily needs are, saying some of your common expressions. One of the favorite things we love to talk about is capturing your isms. You know, we all, I think, don't realize it, but we do have some very specific ways that we say things or things that we say a lot. And capturing some of those with all of your inflection and different pieces in your voice can be really great to kind of preserve and have if you would need it in the future. With message banking, it's a little bit different than that voice banking, because with message banking, you're able to really get all of that variation in your voice. So I think my best difference in voice banking versus message banking is, you know, with voice banking, it's going to sound like you, but it's still going to be kind of monotone and kind of like a computer. So if you're saying something like, I'm so proud of you, it's going to say, I'm so proud of you. With message banking, you're able to capture that in a little bit different way. So you can say, I'm so proud of you, or I'm so proud of you, and really get some of that variation, which sometimes people really want in some of those more personal messages. And finally, there's legacy banking. And legacy banking, again, is really saving some of those more full phrases or those things that are a little bit more specific to you, but it can be recordings that maybe you want to leave for family members or friends, or some of the quotes that are really important to you that you want to save for yourself so that you can reference them in the future if you need them. And all of those are really great and can work together to kind of go towards that same communication goal. And so in thinking about kind of voice, message, and legacy banking, I like to think about the different equipment we might need for these. For message and legacy banking, just to make kind of those quick recordings, the recorder that we recommend is this handheld Zoom H1N recorder. The reason why is because it's really small. It can fit right in your pocket. And so you don't have to necessarily sit down and think of all the things you want to record, but you're able to bring it around with you. And say you're at, you know, your grandson's baseball game, and you want to record like, go get 'em slugger or something like that. You might come up with that idea right at that time, and you're able to just pull it out of your pocket, make a quick recording, and put it back away. And so it's a lot easier to just use within your everyday life and really pull that in. It also records files in the highest audio format so that we know it can go on any device in the future, which is really helpful because we know that if you do need a communication device in the future, all of them are a little bit different and everybody likes different ones. And so we want to find that one that's right for you. And if you're making all of these messages, we want to make sure it's going to go onto any device that you want to use. The Zoom recorders are really great, and you can get them. They're available at the ALS Association. We have some available at CASC that we're able to loan out for free too. And Team Gleason is also another wonderful organization that has them too. So they're always available to be able to rent and maybe do that message banking without any cost to you. For voice banking, you need a couple of extra pieces. You need a computer with access to the internet. Many of you are joining with that today, so that's pretty straightforward. And then all of the programs are really online. So Acapella My Own Voice and that Model Talker, you can just record directly online and it'll start to save those phrases for you so that you can make that voice. It's also recommended that you have a microphone. It's definitely not required. A lot of individuals do it without one, and it's fine as long as you're in a pretty quiet environment. But what's really great about the microphone is that you can get those as well from Team Gleason. And in terms of the voice, if you do need it in the future, Team Gleason does pay for that to go on any device too. So again, it's just another thing to have as kind of an insurance policy in your back pocket. So voice message and legacy banking are all kind of a lot, I think, to process sometimes. And especially when you're thinking about, you know, what do I want to record, or what should I record and save, or all of that, I think, can be kind of overwhelming. And so I wanted to give you guys an idea of kind of support that's available right now for that. There are a lot of resources out there from individuals who have ALS, who have done message banking in the past. They've given ideas of what they've found to be really important to message bank and to legacy bank, and have given a lot of really good topics, which I think can help people just think about those things. But if you want some more person-to-person support too, there's a really great program right now that's a collaboration between Team Gleason and the Boston Children's Hospital ALS Augmentative Communication Program, where basically your local SLP is able to partner with that expert at Boston Children's Hospital, and we can talk through the process of voice, message, and legacy banking, getting you set up on the website to make sure you're recording, checking to make sure the recordings are sounding good and that it's going to make a good and reliable voice. And really talking through, you know, messages and what might be going right or wrong, and how can we troubleshoot that technology. Having that support's been really great, and we've been piloting it a little bit with some of the people who are coming to the UW clinic, as well as people who come to CASC, and they've really appreciated that support. It's also been a really great resource just for us to consider kind of moving forward too, and how are we best serving individuals who might need it in the future. We really love having your feedback and being able to do that too. So if that's something you're interested in at all, you can definitely reach out to me. You can also fill out this form on teamgleason.com. I've included the link there, where you basically just fill out a form that's saying you want assistance with doing voice banking, and they'll reach out to you and we'll start the whole process from there. So now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk a little bit more about what it looks like when you start to notice maybe some changes in your speech.
Thank you, Kat. So in thinking about when you're starting to notice a few changes in your speech, there's about 3 different categories that we want to look at. And we'll go through each of these in more detail, but a quick overview. The first is voice amplification. And this is a really nice way to minimize that effort that it takes to speak. This is really helpful if you're noticing that your voice is becoming softer or your speech is becoming less clear. If you're working really, really hard to make those speech sounds sound good, and you're also working really, really hard to project your voice in a noisy environment, you're going to fatigue very, very quickly. What an amplifier can do is reduce the amount of effort you have to put into producing loud speech and allow you to save that energy for producing really clear speech sounds or for talking for longer periods of time. This is a great tool that we recommend right away. This is something that teachers, coaches, people that don't have ALS are using every day just to preserve their vocal health. Every time we talk, our vocal folds are coming together and becoming more and more fatigued and sore. And so this is just a really great way to reduce fatigue, maintain that vocal health, particularly if you are voice or message banking. Kat mentioned that you want those recordings to sound really good. This is a great way to preserve your voice. So when you're doing those recordings, you have a ton of energy to make them sound great. We'll also talk a little bit about some low-tech or low technology strategies. These are things that we can just quickly access. They're portable, really easy to customize. They're not talking, but it offers a tool for maybe communication breakdowns that you may or may not be experiencing. And then we'll also start considering some free and low-tech, high-tech strategies or things that use more technology. Maybe on your cell phone or an iPad, maybe on your computer. And this might be something that you're just using in a certain environment, like that Kat mentioned, that grandson's baseball game. It might be really noisy and hard to be heard in that setting. So maybe you use an iPhone with a particular communication app in that setting, but you don't need it when you're talking with your spouse at home. The reason we're considering free and low-cost high-tech strategies in this situation is because there are high-tech communication devices that everybody is eligible for depending on their insurance, but you're only eligible for it once. And so we don't want to go too quickly to insurance and ask them to buy a communication device in case you notice different changes in your speech later where you would want a different system. And so we try to be really mindful about which device we're getting. Perfect, you can go ahead to the next one. And so thinking about that first category of that voice amplification, this is just a picture of an amplifier and a microphone. There are different options for microphones that you can wear. This is one that you'd wear over your head, kind of rest behind the ear and come around like a singer. There's also ones that can just clip onto a shirt lapel. There's a variety of options, and it's great to try them out and explore which one might work best for you. And then that microphone connects to that amplifier that you would wear on your body, and it would go around with you. And I think you should be able to hear the audio too of this.
Well, one of the reasons why I like the amplifier, it saves my voice energy so that I do not get as tired in the evening. And I need to remind myself more every day to use it more. Because the first reason when I get tired at night, it's because probably exhausted from expending my voice. But with this amplifier, I can talk slower and also not as loud because the amplification, which is everybody can hear.
So he explained it far better than I just did, but that's the point. You don't expend as much energy because the amplifier is doing the work for you. And here's another example. And so that microphone is actually located right on where your voice box is. And so even though he's using that BiPAP machine for some oxygen, it's still amplifying his voice. Okay, I also mentioned we might be looking at some low technology options. And these are just some of our favorites that you may already have or may have seen. One is called a boogie board. And if you remember the old Etch-a-Sketches, that's what this is, just a lot more modern. You can write on it with a pen, or they come with little styluses, and you can write a quick message, and at the top, that tiny little white dot you see, you press that and the message goes away. So it's not a good option if you want to save something, but if you want to quickly jot down your coffee order or, write a message out to your doctor, you can do that without needing paper and pencil. And then we also have some low-tech communication boards. These might have the alphabet on it. There might be topic-based boards where you might be talking about pain or your needs, or maybe your personal information if you're checking in for a doctor's appointment. One of the really nice things with this alphabet board is something called alpha supplemented speech. If you're noticing that people are having a harder time understanding you, but you're still communicating verbally, by pointing to the first letter in each word you're saying, it really drastically increases your communication partner's ability to understand you, because you're giving them that first letter. And if you think about that, that really cuts down the options of what you might be saying. So that's a really helpful tool. Some people will put these on the back of a clipboard or a little card in their wallet. There's a lot of different ways that you could start to implement these low-tech boards. And then that third category was some free or low-cost high technology options. And here we really think about the technology you might already have, like your cell phone or an iPad. And there's a variety of different apps available, some free text-to-speech apps where you're typing in your message and the device is speaking for you. There's also some apps that are available on those dedicated devices we'll talk about next through insurance that you could also put on your personal technology and start to familiarize yourself with it should you need it in the future. Okay, so support for minimal to moderate changes in your speech. Many of these tools are available through the ALS Association or here at the Waisman Center. Like Kat mentioned, all of these areas are very overwhelming. This is our entire job to understand how these are, how these work and how they differ and what might work for you. And so we're not expecting that you would leave this hour presentation knowing which tools are right for you or how to implement them. And so you're always welcome to have that one-on-one support with us or to talk to whoever your speech pathologist is if you have one about what might be the best solution. Okay, and so then this is the area where we hope, this is just that insurance policy where we don't need these supports, but if we do, I think it's important to talk about what options are available because there are quite a lot of things offered with all of the changes in technology. So when we talk about high technology devices, these are things that can integrate the message and voice banking that you did earlier. We make sure that all the systems we would recommend are compatible with the voice and message banking you did. And so now this computer is going to be sounding as much like you as it can. Another thing I want to mention is that regardless of which physical skill is easiest or most efficient for you, whether that be your eyes, an eyebrow raise, your hands, a shoulder shrug, it doesn't matter, there's an option. So you will never experience too many physical changes to be able to use a communication device. So please don't worry that there wouldn't be an option for you because our job is to always find one. There's a lot of different varieties of how we can help you communicate. These higher tech devices are really neat in terms of environmental control. A lot of them have like infrared systems built in where you can control the television, you can control the lights in your home if you have the right type. And so it's giving you more autonomy than just communication. It's allowing you to control things in the environment as well. And other things such as text messages, phone calls, social media, the Kindle app. These are really fully integrated devices that are giving you access to all the things you enjoy most with regards to communication on a single device. Here are some examples of different systems. This first one on the left with the red highlights in the keyboard. This is when, for individuals who are still able to type really nicely with their hands and just experiencing challenges with their voice. Then we have something like this new iPad Pro, which is really neat. You can use your hands to start, but they also have facial recognition. So if you needed to switch to controlling it with head movement, you could do that. We also have eye gaze devices where you'll see along the bottom of all of those systems a little black bar. And that is a small camera that tracks where your eyes are looking. And so you sit about 18 inches, 2 feet away from the device, and you just look at your message and it responds. There are different communication softwares. And again, this is something that your speech language pathologist will be working with you on. We want to make sure that whatever communication software you're using is compatible with your banked messages, is able to use your voice. We can talk about if you prefer text to speech or if you would prefer to have things, you know, pre-typed out and organized into categories or a little bit of both. Lots of varieties, and really making sure that we do more than just that face-to-face communication with environmental control. And here's some examples. I think it's easiest to just see.
Okay, so I'm in speak.
Hello.
I go to close keyboard, Windows access. I choose the keyboard, the screen. I can drive forward, stop, drive backwards, stop. Make sure I'm still in camera. Yep. Go over, stop. I'm going to close this, go back into communication.
This is cool.
And then go into pause.
Super cool, I think. So you saw that that individual was in his wheelchair, and the computer that was mounted to the chair or attached in front, he was controlling just by using his eyes. And he was using it both to communicate as well as to drive his power chair. And here's another example.
Alexa, call Megan.
Megan O'Brien, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, John.
Can you come over, please? I need some help. It is not urgent.
Absolutely, I'll be right there.
Alexa, hang up.
So what you saw there is he was using a Hey Alexa, there's also Hey Google, those different types of home systems, and the communication device is actually able to communicate directly with those systems and do things like make phone calls or turn on your television, ask what the weather is, things like that. So with that, I think both Kat and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.